It's a fun time of year. It's October. And if it is, that means we've, reached that point in the season where we've probably, reached some high school football games of consequence. I think we've got several on the schedule this week that could be district championship games, even with a few weeks left to play in the season. So on top of that list, I mean, obviously, we've got to talk about China Spring and La Vega in the latest chapter in that long, storied history. We're obviously well acquainted with just how explosive China Spring can be. Alvarado's very acquainted with it after China Spring put up 50 in a quarter. We talked about that on this After Dark podcast, but I'm not sure we should sleep on a La Vega team that has won 4 in a row, won 56-20 last week against Waxahachie Life. What are the odds of a La Vega upset in this game, and would it even classify as an upset?
I don't think so. I mean, I think you mentioned 4 wins in a row for the Pirates over a couple of pretty good opponents, Lorena and Yoakum, for example, are really good teams. I mean, while we're on the subject, let me just say shout out to Josh Gregory, China Spring Athletic Director, texted me yesterday because I had mentioned he watched the late night podcast the other night and he was filling me in that they did not score a defensive touchdown or a special teams touchdown during that 50-point quarter. They did score a safety, so that's defensive points. But so I quizzed him a little bit. I said, okay, how many turnovers? I said, how did they get 7 possessions, right? Because 7 possessions is a half. I mean, it's probably a good half.
12-minute high school football quarter.
Yeah. And so it turns out Alvarado had 4 turnovers, right? So a little bit of a meltdown by Alvarado there. So
and I guess you do have to give China Spring credit. I'm sure some of those turnovers were forced, I mean.
Oh, for sure. And so I think what you're going to maybe have on Friday night, and I'll be covering that game, by the way, right?
Yeah.
Is I think you're going to have sort of a defensive smash mouth type of football game because I think China Spring's strength this season is its defense.
That's interesting to say with Cash McCollum, Kyle Barton, but you guys both have talked about that this year, their defense. DJ, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I mean, it is a little bit interesting that their defense has stepped up so much because if y'all remember, they were the majority of their defense were like first year starters. So it's really impressive for them to come so far. But I mean, they played a really tough non-district schedule. I mean, and their only 2 losses came to like really tough teams in Melissa and Parish Episcopal. And even though they kind of put Connolly away, we can't say Connolly isn't a good team. And obviously they started the season with Lorena and that was a pretty good win. So yeah, I think it'll be close, but I still think China Spring is going to win.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously the safe pick. Here's what I'll say about La Vega. Good coaches over there that know what they're doing. They know how to game plan. They've been in big games before. And I do think that they're like trending in the right direction. That old coaching cliche of, we got to get better every week, blah, 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 blah. They're doing that. I mean, you could see they're, stair-stepping, and making improvements. Obviously, Junior Thornton's a pretty nice addition to that team. Chad and I were at a high school football Hall of Fame board meeting, and Mike Cadell is one of the coaches that's on that board with us. And he was talking about, man, he's good. Junior's good, And I was like, yeah, he is. And interestingly, they've got him playing quarterback, just like Midway did toward the latter stages of, I say latter stages, before he got hurt. They had moved Junior to quarterback. I think his best position is receiver. I mean, that's what he's going to play in college. I could see him kind of as a slot guy at Texas State, but Nevertheless, I mean, he's got, I think, like 700 passing yards, about 600 rushing yards. I mean, he's a playmaker and a nice compliment to Bryson Rowland. So,
yeah, that was going to be my other comment on that game. Is I haven't got a chance to see the Junior Thornton Bryson Rowland 1-2 punch yet this year, so I'm excited to see what that looks like.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. I mean, it's a rivalry game; those are always fun. We've seen some epic, China Spring La Vega games over the years, and so I have high expectations for this one, and I think Chad's going to see a pretty good matchup.
And I am picking La Vega, which kind of goes against personal policy. When I'm going to cover a game, I usually roll with the home team just for the sake of not being annoyed by people, razzing me about who I picked. But I know the guys in the press box over there pretty well, known them for a long time, so I'm not too worried about that one.
They're pretty good guys, so
they'll probably have watched the podcast by then, and they'll hear your explanation. I mean, you did roll with Alvarado last week, so how'd that work out for you?
I had that one right for a quarter.
Yeah, and then the worm turned.